Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Caroline Makes Cards. It's time for a new release at Simon Says Stamp, Handmade Holiday. My cards feature one of the many new released embossing folders, SNOWFLOCKED HILLs. If you need lots of Christmas cards, I have a perfect technique for mass producing them. I'm going to start with just some quick tips on rolling on acrylic paints with a brayer. I like to use distress paints. They seem to be the right consistency for this technique. To begin, I like to prime the roller by picking up paint and then rolling it off a few times on paper towel. This will ensure that when I pick up paint, it will be consistent across the roller. Although I've used this technique many times, I still had to do a little bit of practice. You do not want too much paint, it will just fill up all of those impressions on the embossing folder. It is better to do several light coats, and it may look like all those colors are blending together, but they're not. Too much paint that last time, and I had to pick up the paint out of the impression with some paper towel. Alright, so now working with the SNOWFLOCKED HILLs embossing folder, I began by first of all finding the side with the flat background. I just want to have color on the sky, so I am masking off along the hillside where it meets the horizon of the sky. I am also masking off the top of the embossing folder so I don't accidentally get paint on the other side of it. I find Post-it note tape quick and easy to use. To help the tape follow the curve of the hillside, I just bend it and create a little fold and press it down flat. I was able to reuse the Post-it notes several times. You can see that I'm applying thin layers of paint multiple times to the embossing folder. When I'm done, I remove the Post-it note tape. I have an A2 size panel of Neenah Classic Crest 110 pound cardstock. The embossing folder has an A2 size impression to easily slip the panel into. If I'm going to be doing several panels in one sitting, I don't even bother cleaning up my embossing folder or brayer. The same Post-it note tape is reapplied to the folder. Then I start rolling on several colors of paint. I'm working with a handful. Kitsch Flamingo, Broken China, Speckled Jade, Milled Lavender, and Dusty Concord. Simon Says Stamp's folders are very thick, resulting in beautifully defined images. For this project, I'm working with my Big Shot, and the sandwich is just simply the platform. Neither of the plates are used. I did place one layer of cardstock underneath the embossing folder as I rolled it through. I always notice things as I'm doing my voiceover on my video that I hadn't remembered doing. Before I apply the mask across the crease, I do wipe the paint off and then dry it with a paper towel. Otherwise, the Post-it note will not stick. And honest, that is the only cleanup that I do between panels. I love the beautiful texture quality and the tonal variations that you get by applying the acrylic paint with a brayer. The result reminds me of the beautiful Aurora Borealis. The panels dry very quickly because of the thin layers of paint that are being applied. Once you get going and get a sense of exactly the paint that you need to put on that roller, it goes very quickly and you could literally do dozens of panels in no time at all. When I'm done, I do a little bit of shadow work on both the hillsides and the trees. I'm working with a No. 1 watercolor brush and watered down speckled egg. For the trees, a thin shadow is applied just on one side and at the bottom of each tree. The embossing helps to guide the paintbrush and so it goes very quickly. Between the hillsides, the paintbrushes just lightly run over the embossed line. The shadows just help those elements stand out a little bit more in that sea of white. It's hard for me to make a card that doesn't have some sparkle on it, so all of the trees and the stars are painted with Nuvo Glitter Drops White Blizzard. I also use the applicator to run a thin line along the embossed line between the hillsides. The panels are finished up with some spatter with watered down gouache. The panels and my hand, that is. I'm going to use a secondary sentiment on each of the cards using Simon Says Stamp Winter Birds. I'm using the same paint colors that were used in the background. Dots of the paint are applied to the acrylic paint and I just roll my brayer through it to create a striped effect. The panel is dry in literally no time at all, and I'm ready to go ahead and stamp the sentiment with black VersaFine ink. I'm using the same sentiment, so I don't even have to reposition it on my MISTI. I just move my cardstock up and stamp. The panel has been trimmed down and mounted on foam. When it is dry, the excess foam is removed and it is popped onto a panel that has a decorative edge. The secondary sentiments were die cut with Simon's sentiment labels and mounted on foam. I used Simon's wafer dies Oh Holy Night, Merry Christmas, and Joy for the main sentiment. They were die cut from white cardstock and mounted on foam. And that wraps up these cards featuring Simon Says Stamp's Snow-Flocked Hills. If you love to give handmade cards for Christmas but don't have the time to invest in them, this is a great technique. And it is economical. The paint, the brayer, the folders are all reasonably priced products. Sure to check out the full release, which includes lots of new embossing folders at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you for stopping by. As always, I appreciate your visit.